Hey guys, Victoria Jones Griffith here, and I posted a video last week on my channel talking about why I decided to write my book, and it's called Be Victorious Part 1, and this is Part 2, but I wanted to recap what I was talking about last week. I had a lot of people in my life, since I've been a health and wellness expert for over 20 years, specializing in women's health. I had so many women wanting me to do a fitness program, more workouts, more nutritional programs and all of that. But I got to a frustration point where I was giving so much of the workouts and the nutrition, and I wasn't seeing the results that I felt like I should have been seeing from my clients. But also in the back of my mind, I knew what the missing component was. And so I had to make a huge change or change of direction in order to get my book written so that I could offer a complete program for women. And that is the mindset component. So I started out by writing my story, which is up on Amazon in ebook and paperback. So check that out. I did not intend for this to be a self-help book. It is categorized under self-help, but the reason that I kind of fought that is I set out to write my memoir, and it did turn into having a theme that kind of led to me writing my 5 V's at the end. And the V on the front is not just for my name Victoria or the book title Victorious. It has to do with the 5 V's that help me heal from trauma that I experienced earlier on in my life. And I have so many women showing up right now that have experienced some form of trauma in their life. We have to get to the root of that before we can really see the best version of ourselves and see change. So that's why I wrote the book, but also included the 5 V's, which are found at the end of the book. And I'm gonna start in today with lesson number 1, which is at the end. And let's go over the 5 V's real quick before I jump in there. Again, my last video, that's actually part 1, not lesson 1, but part 1 of this video that I did last week explains the 5 V's, but I always want to go over it, of going from victimhood to a victorious life. So we can bend our fingers, we can open them up, we can do that with our hearts and our minds and our bodies as we expand. And that's what we're really going to talk about today with lesson number 1, starting out in the victim mentality that we've all been in at some point in our life, regardless if you've experienced some form of trauma or not. It's just that inner critic, and we'll talk about that. So the first V, lesson number 1, is victimhood or the victim mentality. The second V, second lesson, is validation. And the third V, lesson number 3, is the voice. And then vulnerability, one of my favorites. The 5th V is the victory. So lesson number 1 is what I wanted to talk about on this video. And lesson number 1 is our first V. That is the victimhood. That is the victim story. That is anything in our lives where that we have created a story and that inner critic keeps telling it to us over and over again. And our goal is to break that cycle, that repetition. And what happens is we get so comfortable telling that story in my book. I talk about my issues in life of repeating that cycle of abuse to myself and at the hands of men. And that was caused by my first incident in college, which was a sexual assault. But to back up, to make this more universal and applicable to more women out there, that victim story actually started, or that inner critic started in with the need to be perfect, where I grew up in a very protected type bubble that I lived in, need to live on that timeline, to finish high school, graduate, go to college, get married, have babies, and the need to be perfect was kind of introduced to me very early on in where I grew up. Not because of my family actually, but more of the external environment that I grew up in the church that I went to. That setting and that environment set in for me to go off to college with that energy of I'm trying to be perfect, I have to be perfect. And then when you're feeling so insecure and you're not loving yourself and trying to grasp at externals to feel good about yourself. And then I started going after my body having to be perfect. My grades had to be perfect. Carried over to every single aspect of my life. And then when that happens, that energy that I was exuding attracts those that are just as damaged and hurting as I was. And then there's that perfect storm for a traumatic life event. And that's what happened to me in college. So read my book. I'm going to go and not go into detail about any of that, because really the most important message that I start out with, have to change that story, whatever it is. So again, it might not be, like in my case, a sexual assault event or some sort of physical abuse growing up. It could be a medical diagnosis that you've been told, by your doctor, you have this, and you've stayed stuck in that diagnosis because it's comfortable, and you've created a life and a story around it. Or you've gotten divorced and you're single and you've created a story around why you are still single. It prevents you from going out and meeting new people or getting on and doing, I'm not big on the dating sites, but maybe it's something that you are interested in, but you don't, because you have this story about why you can't meet somebody. Back to the perfectionism that you were told, maybe by someone that you were overweight and you need to lose that weight. Or I write about in my book, one of the men I dated in my past was always critical about my stomach and telling me I look like Pillsbury Doughgirl and pushing on my stomach all the time. And that gave me a story of, I've got a gut, I will always have a belly. And that's how even our external world will match our internal world. And usually that's, and vice versa, that's how it happens. And that's why I felt so called to write this book, because you can have all the nutrition and the perfect workouts that can all be dialed in. But if you don't have this mental work, this inner workout, program, blueprint, then all of that work just kind of goes to waste. So I want to maximize your results if you're looking for, changes in your exterior, or if you just want to live a happier, more fulfilled life and get out of that, what I call stuckness. Because when we feel stuck, we just can't move forward. And typically it's because of some type of story, that victim story that we've created a life around. So that is called, changing that story is called neuroplasticity. You're going to be hearing a lot about this new frontier of the mind and the work with it. You can actually retrain your brain, and even if your traumatic event happened long ago, you can go back in and rewrite that story from long ago. It's better to do it immediately. So if something happens, now that sends you in that downward spiral, we have to immediately catch, where we're going with that and the story we're creating and stop it. And that's called changing those in creating new neural pathways. And the best way that I like to describe it is, think of your brain with a whole bunch of train tracks running through it, in the grooves of the train tracks. If you can picture that, we have lots of tracks running through our brain. And the important thing is to send positive trains down those tracks so that we create those positive neural pathways. We have 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day on average. 90% are from yesterday. So if those thoughts from yesterday are negative and we're beating ourselves up and that inner critic is talking a lot, then we carry that over to the next day, and we carry that over to the next day, and we're creating those grooves, and they're getting deeper. Especially if you're in your 40s, my grooves were pretty deep. So I had to get help in learning, because I didn't know about all of this. I really thought it was woo-woo, because when people say, oh, do affirmations and all that positive stuff, like I put in my book, I kind of wanted to punch them. I mean, not really, I'm not a violent person, but it is, you know, it's one of those things where it was annoying to me. It's kind of like the whole self-help part. It just seems too good to be true, seems cliche. So it is truth and it is scientific and it does work because I've used it on myself. I've had to, so that I could get out of that victim mentality to live the life that I'm living now and have the body that I want, and all of that. Again, it all goes together. Weight might not be your thing. It might be something else, again, that you're trying to get unstuck, that I like to call it from. So let's go back to the trains. So I have 4 steps in order to create those neural pathways, those positive neural pathways. And again, you can do this at any age, but when a negative thought comes in, we have to catch it immediately. And all I can think about is when I'm meeting with my ladies and I'm training with them, and they start in at the beginning of the session and they, you know, they pull their top down because it's coming up maybe when they're doing some sort of abdominal work or squatting, and they make a joke about their midsection and start laughing, and they expect me to laugh, and they say it again, and I'm not giving them any kind of response. I'm trying to help them shut it down. And the reason that I'm doing that, it's not because I'm some, you know, really tough, mean trainer. It's because it really starts almost triggering me. I mean, I've done a lot of work now that it doesn't actually trigger me. It is just, I'm very sensitive to it because I used to say those things to myself, and I want to see change in my clients. Again, why I wrote my book. I get frustrated when we can't break through that barrier, especially when, you know, we as women knock ourselves. So catch that thought. So if you're telling yourself, ugh, I'm fat, or making fun of your belly or whatever it is, stop that. Stop that train of thought, and immediately don't let yourself go there. I would say, I'm not going that direction today, going the other direction. So stop that thought. And then it's usually fear-based because you're fearful of something, of letting that weight go. A lot of the times it's, you know, it's something deeper. So it's that trauma that's causing us that fear response. And so we have to let that, I call it fear cargo. Think about throwing it off. You got the visual on the train, throwing that fear-based cargo off. And then we have to redirect that train, create that new positive neural pathway with a positive. And again, that sounds so just cliche, cheesy, whatever, but it does work. So thinking of a positive, I try to think of something in the same family of maybe having weight on. So what would be a positive having weight on? Maybe you know, if you're older in your 40s, when I put on a little more weight, my face is fuller, I look younger. Not saying that's gonna be an excuse to stay in the weight that we're not enjoying ourselves at that moment, but it does redirect to a positive, because that is a positive in a lot of ways. Or you feel stronger when you might have, you know, a little more curves on your body, or just curves itself. You might feel a little sexier. That is still more positive than telling yourself I'm fat, because when you tell yourself you're fat, your body is going to hold on to fat. So again, you can apply this to anything, any story you're telling yourself. I used to say that about my finances. I'm broke. I would tell people, I've got no money, I can't go out to dinner tonight. I'm broke. I'm broke. That was my story. That keeps you in that victim mentality. You cannot live a victorious life if you're telling yourself, I'm broke, because you will be broke. You know, speaking from experience, it will manifest itself, especially if you say it enough. So we have to catch ourselves in it, throw that fear-based cargo off, redirect with a positive, and then the 4th one, most important, reaffirm. So that is super important, that we drop any labels that we've attached to ourselves as, I'm never gonna be able to lose weight, I hate working out, all those negatives that surround even weight, I don't have the time, and all of that. Just make sure all of that is thrown out, and then reaffirm again with that positive story, thought, affirmation. And we're gonna go over that in the 2nd V with validation. We get to lesson number 2 in the following week, because I have some more things that I have used in my past that have worked. I met with a spiritual director. If you read my book, I had actually two. It was the first one that introduced me to so many techniques that I have a binder of all the things that I used to heal myself over 10 years. But I don't want you to have to take 10 years of your life to get to the place where you feel like you are living a victorious life. So that is why this is so important to me, to get this information out to you and go over my 5 V's. I'm very called to write this book over doing any aesthetic, fitness, workout, rah, and then nutrition plan as a fitness professional. I really felt like this was the missing piece and would allow so many women, so specialize in women, and men, you can do this too, allow so many women to get past that point in their lives of feeling stuck, especially if you are trying to lose weight and you just keep hitting walls or falling off that diet or plateauing. Since that is my specialty, I really feel like that inner workout comes first. And I said, I think on my last video, why not try that first? Because that inner work, all the 5 V's that I list are all free. They're all things you can do on your own without spending a dime. And here I am, I know, my main, job is still health coaching, one-on-one personal training, and nutritional counseling with my metabolic typing program. But I really do feel that if you do that inner work first, which again is free and everybody has access to, like tonight, today, whatever time you're watching this, that why not try that first? And then pull in those other items, the workouts and the nutrition, because that way you know yourself first, and then you're not wasting all of this time trying to figure out what is working, what's not working. It just becomes a lot clearer when you start with that piece. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and get my book on Amazon. Again, ebook if you just want it immediately, paperback. And I think my story is going to resonate with more people than I even thought that have gone through just that life of feeling like you're not good enough and that you're damaged goods, that you can't get out of this place of being stuck. We are meant to expand. We are meant to have growth in our lives. And that is how you live a victorious life. So, be victorious.